Hi y'all, welcome back to the garden. Thank you for all of you who watched the last video and all the love you showed me in that. I was going to shoot my cut flower farm video today, or my cut garden video with all the seeds and stuff, but it has been a beautiful day. It's been about 65 and I've been outside trying to organize the barn all day getting ready for garden season, but I wanted to shoot a video today. I got a couple projects to do. One is to treat this royal star magnolia behind me right here. I got this one last year in the tree sale. I think I paid about $70 for it. But when it came to me, the guy that delivered it said that it had scale and it needed to be treated. So I treated it in the fall. I'm going to spray it today with a dormant horticultural oil, and I'll show you that process and what I'm using. But let's turn around and see if you can see what issues we're having here. So maybe you can see how like dark these branches are. So this is something, I've done a lot of research. I've had scale before on a maple and actually killed the maple and I had to have it replaced. But scale can be very damaging to plants, and typically it will cause stem death, branch death. But you can see all of this black maybe in here on the stem. So this type of scale, I'm assuming, I believe this is sooty mold that's developed because of the honeydew put off by the scale. So scales are a really, really annoying insect that has typically a really tough outer shell, so they're difficult to get rid of. And because of that, there are limited treatment options, but one of those is spraying a horticultural oil to cover them in the winter or the fall to smother them. And so I'm going to be coating this very thickly today, and hopefully that will resolve some of those issues. There are non-organic methods of treatment. Of course, I would recommend you use those as a last resort, because as this is a blooming tree, there will be honeybees potentially and other good pollinator friends on this thing as it blooms. But I was going around this week and also looking at all the buds on all the things I bought last fall, which is a good sign. I was concerned about a few of them because they were kind of stressed from the transplant because it was so dry last summer going into fall, but we've had a really wet winter. And so you can see all these nice buds and stuff developing on this tree, which is a good sign. So I'm going to do this project second. First, I'm going to take you and show you another project where I'm going to be transplanting some stuff. So you know, around the pool, I'm doing a hedge of limelight prime hydrangeas. There are currently a couple of 9-barks in that area, along with a butterfly bush. So today, I'm not going to be transplanting those things, but I'm going to be doing what some people call like a root prune. So I'm going to take a shovel and go around the outside edge of it to cut those roots. And as it wakes up in the spring, it'll have a little smaller root system that will get a little thicker and make it easier to transplant when I find a spot for those. I actually think I'm going to put the 9-barks in the cut flower garden because 9-bark foliage is really nice in cut flower arrangements. So let me go grab a shovel and we'll get started on that. So any good old shovel will work for this job. Today I'm using what is called a root slayer. Y'all recommended this to me last year, several of you did, and so when I was pulling up and moving a lot of stuff, so I picked one up, and this is the name right here, root slayer. And it's really good because it has the serrated edges on the end of the shovel to cut through roots. So what I like using this for is like really tough grasses, digging those up, but it also just makes cutting through roots of established things much easier. So I'm going to set the camera down, just kind of show you where I'm going to go on the outside of this border. We have 3 things I'm going to do this to. So we have this 9-bark right here. I'm not sure exactly what variety these are because these were here when I bought the house. My best guess is Little Devil. It kind of looked like a Little Devil because they are pretty small and they've been here for a while, I can tell. So there's one here, one down there, and then there's a bigger butterfly bush a little further down. I'm going to go ahead and go around the outside edge of that too. Because it will be coming out and being transplanted somewhere else in the garden as well. So I'm just going to go a little bit. I don't want a huge root ball because it'll make it difficult for me to move, but I'm going to go around the outside edge a little bit, not super close, and you can hear the shovel cutting through roots. Like I said, I'm not going to lift it out of the ground. This is just root pruning. Going to wiggle a little bit though. And then in spring, another month or more, I'll come through and transplant it. And I'll be able to see where I cut the roots previously to make that job a little easier. And that is it. You just leave it where it's at, and then in spring, or a couple more weeks, maybe another month, come through and pull it up. Now this butterfly bush needs pruned so it doesn't become a second story plant. Butterfly bushes bloom on new wood, so if you don't prune them, they're going to bloom at the top on the new growth that they set off. So this is going to be pruned later once it starts showing some growth, or after I transplant it. But for right now, I'm just going to do the root pruning like I did on all the others. I have found that the butterfly bushes, I've already dug one up, I can't remember where it was, do not have a very big root system here. And I think that's because of our clay soil. They like a little drier conditions, and it's been a really wet winter. So I think although these perform well, I think the root system might rot a little bit over winter. So they need to be planted high. And that is as simple as that project is. You can do this any time of year, really. I probably wouldn't encourage it like during the hottest part of summer. But if you have something big to transplant that's well established, like those things, this method can work really well. Because what happens, you cut the roots, they get a little more fibrous within where they're growing, closer to the root ball, and then you come through and basically cut them again when you're transplanting them, because they will root out a little bit more between now and then, but it'll set them up for better success because their root system closer to the bottom of the root ball will be a little more fibrous for water uptake. My job in the barn today has been to start organizing a lot of my garden stuff. So I took a lot of time and started organizing all of this, but I've got a million different little fittings to do the irrigation that I've tried to start kind of piecing together here and there. Still got a bunch of stuff coming because it's going to take a lot to get that going, but I wanted to at least get a head start so when the project rolls around, I've got everything ready. So while we're waiting for my backpack sprayer battery to charge for a few minutes, I am going to selectively prune some limbs on the trees that I planted last fall, and I'll show you why right quick. So this is a beautiful redbud, just no specific species or anything, just generally redbud. And you'll see here that it has a really beautiful form, and that's why I picked it out. But we've got some really odd branching going on. Right now I'm going to focus on the tiny branches on this video, and then I'll come through and get bigger ones. And I want to do this before it starts leafing out so this tree is not sending energy into putting growth on these branches. So you'll see this one right here, which is growing way back that way, needs to come out. It's growing into the trunk. It's actually rubbing against another stem back there. But also these little ones, I don't want this growing like on the ground. So I'm going to come through and just chop off these small branches right now that are growing, like this one's almost growing on the ground, and don't need that. Here's an odd one that's kind of growing into the trunk. And I'm just doing that because you can see, like, look where this was rubbing against this other branch. It will cause an open wound and then damage and disease, and that is not good for your tree. So I'm going to come through and clean up a lot of these lower ones. Like you see this one right here, maybe. Let's go around a little bit. That one right there. Right here is growing like way out this way. So we want to get that one because it's growing completely from the other side of the tree. These are about as big as your handheld bypass pruners will cut. I'm gonna have to come back and get bigger pruners for those, but I wanna get all of these lower ones that are growing oddly right now. I'll come back through and cut those others later. So I'll come back and get those bigger ones, but basically any that are growing really oddly and touching any other branches. This one's probably one that I would cut out. I'm not an arborist, but some general good rules of thumb. Let me show you where this one's touching, and this is what I'm talking about right here. So these two leaning together, and you can actually see right there where they're touching. Not a good thing. So I'm gonna come through and cut this bottom one out because it's a little low. This one out because it's also kind of low and growing oddly from the other side of the tree. And you just want to open this back up to be more vase shape. Cut this, it's growing odd. So I don't do a lot of big tree pruning because it can be kind of dangerous. But all of the smaller stuff in the spring that's pretty easy to get is good. I think there was a damaged one I saw on here. May have to get a ladder to get out and get it. Oh, it was this one. It's broke. I'll leave that. It come apart. This is a London plane tree, and it is going to be spectacular out here, I think. There were a couple broken branches from when it got delivered, this one in particular, but it's pushing all sorts of new growth out of it. I don't know if that's from being delivered or if it was from earlier when it was cut from the field or dug from the field. And some of these branches just need to be pulled apart. Or you see this one right here that's kind of touching. It needs to be pulled out. It's flexible enough that it would continue growing out correctly. It's just from when it was tied up and delivered. So I'll get a ladder and fix that after the video. All right, didn't need a ladder. I just needed a little more oomph in both hands. So I was able to get that, and you can see it's growing out better now and not tangled within itself. And I don't really see anything else on this one that needs worked on. Now this one was interesting when I was looking at it the other day. This is an autumn splendor, I think horse chestnut. And it's got a really weird branch growing right here, which I don't want to encourage. Look at it, it goes up and then down. So I'm going to cut that off because it's got a new bud right here. I'm going to cut that right here. And I think that was really the only one that I saw here. There's a little bit of crossing right there. I'm going to snip that before it starts growing. And rubbing. Here's a damaged stem right here. I'll cut that off because it's also touching this other branch. I probably will come through and cut off this lower one. I don't know that I can get it with these pruners. Let's see. There we go. Because it was really close to this one, and limb it up so it's a little more symmetrical there. You want to see something that was really exciting for me because I got this tree. This is a Persian ironwood, Parodia persica. It has pink blooms in the spring. Actually, right now, it's not technically spring yet. I'll turn the camera around and show you. They're not like super extravagant or anything, but I didn't realize it was going to be another nice focal point right now. It's beautiful in the fall. It was like a yellow. But these nice pink blooms in the spring are also pretty striking. I really like this one from its like twisty stems. It's a really beautiful structure. It is leaning a little bit. I never came back through with a tractor and pulled it, but you know, that's just, it'll grow upright and find a new leader, and you can see it just kind of grows all over the place anyway up there. So I'm not concerned about it. It'll be really beautiful and kind of a little funky. how it's growing and a nice thing to look at. This Royal Star Magnolia also needs some pruning, mostly at the bottom, where it's not technically like suckers or anything, but there's a lot of lower growth there that I'd like to cut off. I'm not going to do that today because I'm going to treat it. I'll wait until it starts showing a little more opening of the blooms or the buds or the leaves, and then I'll trim on that a little bit. I don't want to stress this tree out any more than it may already be as it's trying to overcome this 𝗑𝗟𝗧𝗦 mold issue. So we'll leave it where it's at. Can come through and obviously pull off like these little things that are already broken. But otherwise it's got a pretty nice shape. So I'll just be cutting off those lower level branches just to have it some more upright so I can plant under it with some other perennials and such. One thing I need to tackle, and that is not going to be today, is this Japanese maple. You know, I put a root quencher below it last year, which is a little irrigation device. It's under this pile of leaves right here. But there's a lot of dead stems on this, so I need to come back before it starts leafing out and prune on it. I can actually probably come through and just like snap the dead off, but it would probably be best to kind of cut back because you could see a lot of this twigginess last fall. And then it will be good to selectively come through and clean up and shape a little bit so it'll have a nice shape. And now that it's getting adequate water, it'll perform much better in this location. I trimmed up some of the bigger maples last fall when we moved in, so they don't need any pruning. I mainly limbed up the branches so I could mow under it easier, but they look so much nicer. They had gotten pretty low and just did not have a great shape to them. Now they're like a perfect oval, which is really beautiful. The crabapples down the driveway there also need some pruning on them, but those are big limbs, and so I'll have to get the tractor out to drag those to the burn pile because they're really difficult to cut under because they are so low. And I don't know how much longer those will have here. They've got a lot of suckering at the bottom. We'll see how they bloom this year. And they were otherwise pretty healthy last year, even though they don't look super great for a crabapple. They were doing, I think, pretty okay. So leave them for another year or so. They may come out in the future just to put something that's a little more healthier, does a little better, or an improved variety of a crabapple. There's lots of better varieties out there than some of those that were planted quite a number of years ago, it looks like, based on how big it is. All right, let's talk about treating this tree for scale. This is horticultural oil, dormant spray oil, it's also called, and this is from 𝗤𝗏𝗏. I love the 𝗤𝗏𝗏 brand, and this actually came from 𝗣𝗜𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏, which is a local garden center. You can get it probably at most garden centers. It's really common. If you have any fruit trees, you may already be used to spraying your fruit trees with it. Typically, fruit trees are sprayed 2 to 3 times in the winter, and then, well, going into winter, and then late winter, and then maybe spring before they bud out. It is important to read the instructions on this. This is organic, so it's just an oil, but if you use it during the really hot part of the day, that's kind of why I've waited to the end of the day, even though it's only in the mid-60s today, you could burn plants with it because it is oil. So follow the instructions on the back of it. It said it actually gives you specifics for the plant and specifics for any insects you're battling. And so I went with the scale, and it said 1 to 4 tablespoons. I went ahead per gallon, and I went ahead and put 4 tablespoons in just to try and knock this issue out. So I'm gonna go see if the battery's fully charged or partially charged to my sprayer, and then I'll show you how I'm gonna treat this tree. So let me show you my sprayer. This is a 105EX from Sprayers Plus. I bought it many years ago from mostly working and being interested in the lawn and spraying humic acid and such on it. There are a lot of great battery powered sprayers now on the market. Back then there wasn't so many, but this is a really good one. It is not necessarily cheap. There are cheaper ones out there, but it'll hold up to 4 gallons. It does get pretty heavy if you got 4 gallons on your back. So I only have a gallon in here right now. I'm gonna try and spray that entirely on the tree and coat it really good. So let's get this on and show you how we're gonna tackle this. So I like a battery powered sprayer. This one's priming. You may be able to hear it right now because they're just easier. There's not a whole lot of pumping involved. Obviously you could do this with a manual pump sprayer. And if you're not using multiple sprayers, one to treat, like if you're using, this is Dormant Oil, so organic, I would recommend you have one for pesticides, insecticides, and if you're using non-organic chemicals, have a separate one for that. They're relatively inexpensive just to get 1 or 2 gallon ones. So if you're spot treating, if you don't, it's always recommended to triple wash your container with soap. All right, so this sprayer, it's not been used in a while, so we'll see if it'll want to spray out for me. Okay, so we'll get it going. Make sure my backpack's shaken up really well, and you really want to coat the stems when you're dealing with scale. If you're not coating the tree, the insects are not going to get smothered. So we're going to spray what may look very heavily, but to the point of runoff is typically what's said. So this tree's fully in the shade. By tomorrow, this will be all dried and good to go. The primary issue is down here on the bottom, so that's where I'm putting a lot of my focus. But you do want to get all of the branches that you can. Now, depending on what you're spraying, you might want to wear PPE, which is protective personal equipment, or personal protective equipment, so a mask, goggles. This is just Dormant Oil. Organic chemicals can be harmful to you, but this is just an oil. Use whatever you're comfortable with. All right, I've washed out the sprayer. I would recommend you do that pretty immediately because this is an oil. It's probably not likely to get gummy, but with the fine mist attachments, it could gum up. Those mist attachments, probably not great for the internals of the pump either. So wash that out, spray water through the whole system. If you have soapy water, preferably. And then you're good to go. So it's been a beautiful day here. I spent a lot of it in the barn cleaning up because that's just a project I need to tackle. The days are getting longer, long. Springtime will spring forward, and this week the weather's going to be beautiful. So we may have actually an earlier spring than normal. I am still not changing the date my annuals are going to get delivered or anything, but that means hopefully I can get a whole lot more accomplished before all the things arrive for planting over the next month. So maybe we'll have an earlier frost date this year. I've seen it as early as like April 20th, 23rd here. So who knows, but that could at least get some of my vegetables planted if that was the case. It's always helpful to wait until Mother's Day here because you never know when you might get a late frost. So thank you guys for joining me on this little chore activity today. Today was really productive. I hope you're enjoying your garden and you're having nicer weather where you're out. If not, I'm sure it's coming soon. Thank y'all, and remember, be a light. Take care. Bye.